So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology. Should you buy the iPhone XS Max in 2022? That is the aim of today's video. Now, the launch year of this phone was 2018, and as I covered in my iPhone XS video, this phone still feels quite premium. You do have stainless steel edges right here on the body of this phone, and it does have a glass back, which to me still feels and looks quite premium, although this is an iPhone X nearly identical design right here. But let's talk about where you can get the price for this phone right now. I like to look at eBay because this is what people will sell them for just on the used market, and they look like they're going for around $350. It could go up depending on the storage, depending on the carrier, but I've seen bids as low as $250. So if you can scoop up a bid on $250, you're getting a phone that I paid over $1,000 for when it was new for $250. If you can scoop that up, you just got a steal, even though this phone is a few years old now. What has really changed so much? They squared it off. It now has a matte textured back. Overall, this phone is still quite premium, even by comparison to the iPhone 13 Pro Max, which is clearly better. But it's not like leaps and bounds ahead. It's just a redesign with these squared edges and still contains that stainless steel, that large size, and that premium feel. Okay, so what is still nice about this phone? Well, I would say the ergonomics, the comfort of this phone. This phone feels so good in the hand. At 6.5 inches, this was the first Max phone. They went up from a 5.5 inch 8 Plus. So this was a big device. They went up from a 5.8 inch iPhone X. So this is when Apple really started making the phones big, and a lot of people enjoyed that. I personally just liked how it felt. These rounded edges, the way it feels in the hand, and I actually really dig the gold here on the iPhone XS. I think it was one of the better looking golds. It just looked really good in my personal opinion. I also like the iPhone 12 Pro's gold, but this one was very good. In addition, this phone weighs 208 grams. Now, 208 grams is not a super light device, but this iPhone is not the heaviest either. We're already up to like 240, I think, on the iPhone 13 Pro Max, so it's up there. The display on the iPhone XS Max is an OLED panel right here at 6.5 inches. It's 60 hertz, but 60 hertz is still very acceptable. It has 2688 by 1242 pixels, a little bit of an odd resolution. Vibrancy is strong. It's 19:9 aspect ratio, not a 16:9. So it has decent width. It's not as narrow as some other phones on the market. And when you are reading articles and stuff like that, it's also tack sharp, as it's over 450 ppi. So if you are reading things, you're never going to see a pixel ever on this phone right here. Very tack sharp text, and it's wide enough that it's an enjoyable reading experience for this phone. At 625 nits of brightness, there are brighter iPhones out there now, getting at 800 from the 11 Pro. It does have 3D touch though, which makes it faster to actually respond to your presses than even the new haptic feedback that Apple decided to get rid of with the 3D touch. They went to the haptic feedback, so it's actually faster in that respect. And you get dark mode, night shift, and true tone with the software, just like the other iPhones. There's also an oleophobic coating on here, so if it hasn't worn off, it should be pretty glossy and beautiful to look at this panel, especially if you get one on a deal. You can see right there in the light, just really glossy and gorgeous screen right there. The only thing I would say is that the notch does get in the way, as most iPhones. Other than that, they really haven't changed display tech too much in the past few years. I would say the iPhone XS Max still has a beautiful overall display here. I paid so much more than you're gonna pay right now for this, and now you're getting it for like a budget phone price. This is crazy what you're getting here. Okay, so let's discuss the software here. iOS 15.2.1 is on board here. It does give you the ability in 15. You could have these different pages, you can hide them and stuff like that. That's pretty cool. In addition to that, the widgets are here for iPhone XS Max. It's never really launched with the iPhone XS Max, so you're getting this much more up-to-date experience. In addition, you do get the focus modes, which I absolutely love. I didn't think I would care much about these. I thought they were just trying to add something. It was kind of gimmicky, but actually in reality, this feature is amazing. When you put it in work mode, it really does silence everything. You can get to work. When you sleep, you put in sleep, it doesn't bother you. It's a pretty good feature overall. So just having the overall software being updated all the time for the iPhone XS Max still just makes it feel like you're not behind. And I honestly would pick up this over a budget Android phone any day, because the software and the feel is just so much more high end than those devices. Even though you get a better camera, you'll get longer software support and better software, better application support, a more polished experience here, even though this is a few-year-old iPhone at this point. Now, the performance of this phone right here, Steve Jobs will be proud to see where his iPhone came from in terms of being faster than all the clunkier phones on the market till now. You can buy these 3-year-old plus iPhones and they still run faster than some current cheaper Android devices. So Apple A12 Bionic in here with 2.49 gigahertz, 4 gigabytes of RAM. You're not going to get a crazy benchmark score compared to some of the newer A15, A14s of the world. But I'm telling you, the way most people use an iPhone, you open up some applications, this thing feels buttery smooth. It feels super quick in pretty much everything you need to do. Now, I would say that the newer iPhones feel blazing fast. This one still feels quick though. I even think this phone will still be updated for a few more years. I said 2 in my iPhone XS. Some people disagreed with that. Usually their life cycle is around 5 years. We'll have to see where they go with it. You know, it probably won't be because it can't handle it. It'll probably just be because it's too much to support, but we'll see. Maybe we'll get 6 or 7 years on this phone. Maybe. That is a potential because it definitely has really good power, and it can even run all the latest games right now. Granted, they won't load as fast as the newer 13 models, but they run just fine, and they do warm up the phone a little bit more, but still, it's a very good experience overall on the 6.5-inch OLED display. So one thing to keep in mind if you're looking for one of these phones right now in 2022 is that they do have up to 512 gigs. You will pay a little bit more for more storage, no matter if you're looking for this used, new, whatever, you'll pay more for storage, but I recommend at least 256 gigs. Now, I deleted some stuff out of here, but you know, this phone, you'll fill it up pretty quick if you're using the 4K video that is available for it, which I recommend because it looks amazing. But you might also use more if you're using a higher quality slow-mo, like the 240 versus the 120, or if you're just using up, you know, space for games and apps, it will fill up. So do keep in mind, it will do that. So when talking about the battery health, make sure that you find one with a good capacity. Mine has a ridiculous capacity of 100% still because this particular year, I believe I was using the Note 9. I love that phone. So it got more usage than this one. So mine stayed up there. But I gotta say, this one right here, in terms of battery life, is a 1-day phone. It's a phone that with medium usage, you'll get through the day. It's not gonna be incredibly impressive, anything like that. It only has a 3174 milliamp hour battery in here, so that's actually quite small compared to the over 3900 in the current 13 Pro Max. This is quite a small battery by comparison for a similar size display, so don't expect anywhere near current levels of that, but still, you'll get pretty solid battery life. Unfortunately, you won't get very fast charging. This is capable up to 15 watts, which is actually pretty weak sauce right now. There's phones that can charge 60 watts. You know what I'm talking about if you know phones, OnePlus. But this phone right here, wireless charging on the rear is pretty good. You can place it down on a map, but that's also quite slow and it warms the phone up a little bit. So I'd say the charging game is quite slow on this phone. That is a downside of something like an iPhone XS Max. The cameras on here, by comparison to the newer phones, look kind of weak sauce. They looks really small, but when you actually start using them, you realize they're very good. They do have the smart HDR, and for some people, the telephoto lens is more enjoyable than the ultra wide. I would say that's a niche group. A lot of people do like the ultra wide, but you know, you can zoom pretty good on here. 10x. You can't even zoom 10x on the current iPhone 13, which tops out at 5. So if you're in the zoom, this is actually probably a better phone than some of those newer iPhones when it comes to just straight up zooming, because it has a dedicated lens for that. Now, I will say one thing, 4K 60 made its appearance on the iPhone 8 Plus, but it got better here when we did have the Smart HDR available. The video on here, I could take a video with this today in 2022. You probably wouldn't even say anything about my video quality. It's that darn good. There are some cons and pros, but I would say overall, it's a solid setup here. It's definitely better than the iPhone XR, as it does have the zoom camera on the back with the telephoto, but it's pretty close to that phone. I'm still impressed with these results. I'm not gonna say I'm blown away, but these results are still pretty acceptable. Let's take a look at some of my photos and I'll show you what I actually achieved for this phone right here. Let me go to XS Max photos. You'll see some orange pumpkins. Pretty good overall, not bad right there. I would say the overall sharpness just got much better on the newer phones. It's just a little bit better processing going on. You'll see right here a fall leaf. Just beautiful overall solid examples right here. You can see EV parking, good detail. But when you zoom in, you'll notice on the newer phones, there's a little bit more sharpness on the full zoom, but they still did pretty good with dynamic range even at this time. So Apple's cameras have been good for a while, and here's some night samples you'll see right here. It still picked up pretty good detail as long as there's a decent amount of light. This didn't have a dedicated night mode that came with the iPhone 11 series. I don't think you would be disappointed if you got this like $200-300. You definitely wouldn't be. Now the audio quality on this phone comes out of the bottom and up at the top speaker here. And I will say that the overall loudness of this phone got pretty loud, but the newer phones improved on the overall clarity and the bass at the high points of your audio. But it never really sounded tinny, anything like that on this phone, so I think you'll be pretty good. However, I will warn against getting it wet. I actually got some water in the speaker before, and it really messed up the sound for like a couple of days. So be careful with water. I know this does have an IP68 rating, but still be careful with water when it comes to getting it in the speakers, because it can mess things up a little bit. From a connectivity standpoint, this is where the phone kind of falls apart. It doesn't have 5G, so if you buy this now, you're investing in an old technology, which is not really recommended. Also, this doesn't have Wi-Fi 6, so your Wi-Fi performance might struggle a little bit compared to newer phones. In addition, that signal strength is trash on this phone compared to the newer Qualcomm-based iPhone 13 models and 12 models. It just loses bars and signal strength a lot. I've even had dropped calls on this phone, so this is where it falls apart a little bit. However, I will say that at least you still have Bluetooth 5.0, which is something that you don't see on some other devices. Some of them are in the 4 range, especially some older devices, not current phones. But Bluetooth 5.0 is still being used on current iPhones, which is not the latest standard, but it's still being used, so it's solid there. And of course, they're using Apple's Lightning port, which is still being used. I would like to see USB-C, but that's still being used for now. Face ID, though, is surprisingly still similar. I mean, when I unlock this phone, I feel like I'm unlocking the latest iPhone 13 Pro Max. So that still feels very high-end indeed. So should you buy the iPhone XS Max in 2022? It's hard to make this recommendation if you care about the latest and greatest tech specs. If you don't, you just want a high-end, cheap iPhone experience, you don't want to make payments, you don't have the budget for a newer iPhone, this pickup right here is likely to please you. I'm not even kidding. One thing to do keep in mind, if you pick this up now, use it for a year or two, you're not going to get anything back for it. Unfortunately, the resale value will tank as it continues to tank as newer iPhones come out. Buy this with the intention to use the crap out of it and then whatever. It's kind of like buying an old beater car. You just use it, forget about it. You ain't buying it to get money out of it. But this is more like getting an older used luxury car because you get a luxury feel for not a luxury price. Let me know your thoughts on the iPhone XS Max here in 2022. Do you think it's worth it? Are you thinking, what the heck is Nick talking about? Ain't nobody want that phone right now. I'm open to discussion. Drop them down below. Thumbs up if you liked the video. Subscribe if you haven't already. Nick here. Be sure to be well. I will catch you all in the very next episode, and peace.